everybody? Garrett back here, and I just want to thank you guys for checking out my last video. It seems like you guys really dug that one, going back in time, talking about some retro DVDs, horror DVDs that were banned or recalled off the store shelves. Now I'm back to go back in time again to the glory days of physical media collecting, at least for me, was the era of DVD. And man, when it comes to the horror genre, I was just so heavily into collecting at that time that I was searching for everything, and I was trying to get my hands on anything I could to learn so much more about this genre. Now, one of the biggest problems of being a physical media collector back then was, eBay was kind of new. Amazon was there, but that was new as well. There wasn't this social media communities like there is now of people selling stuff. There was message boards where you'd hear about all this stuff, but things weren't easily accessible like they are now. And trying to be a horror collector and on these message boards learning about specific horror movies that you just want to get your hands on, mostly because I'd never seen them before and I wanted to check these out for the first time, but they weren't always easy to get. Now, what I want to talk about today is 10 of some of the most hard to find horror DVDs of all time. Now, are some of these DVDs available now? Yes, we've had other editions since then, but if I bring it back to the 2000s during my heyday of collecting, and I know a lot of you as well, if you were collecting in the 2000s, the DVD format, you're going to kind of feel me when I talk about some of these releases. Now again, like I said, this video is mainly about movies that were super hard to get back then. Like I said, we do have some that have come out, but there are some on this list that have never come out, and there are 2 on this list that I still do not have in my collection to this day. All right, let's start with the easy one, the one that everybody talks about, the one that we are going to get a 4K for. I know a little bit about that release, and it is coming soon, guys. I cannot wait. It's one of the most, I think, sought-after releases in horror history right now. This thing has been so long gone, and I do think that it's still a movie that is very overlooked and underappreciated because people just haven't seen it. And I'm talking about Fright Night 2. Man, this is one of those movies that if you were a horror DVD collector, you wanted in your collection. It just was impossible to get. Now, if you want to hear the story of how I acquired this back in the day when this thing was on eBay for boatloads of money, and that was really the only way you could get this thing. So guys, if you want to hear the full story of how I acquired this Fright Night 2 DVD back in the day when it was almost impossible to find, I'll link that video at the end of this one for you guys to check out. But Fright Night 2 had to be on the list. It was like the most well-known, lost kind of horror movie on most people's want list. All right, now I'm going to cheat here. This one's going to be 3. This is going to be 3 movies in one because it's part of a series. And I'm going to talk about the Slumber Party Massacre collection. You have part 1, 2, and 3 here from that Massacre collection. They did Sorority House Massacre as well. So there's a lot more to this, but this is just the Slumber Party ones because these are the ones everybody seems to love. Now, if you take a look, it's got that old school image there. Then you got part 2 with the old school image. And then you have part 3 as well. And it's got that cool Massacre collection kind of title, I guess, or bar, or whatever you want to call it, on the top there. But this was put out by a New Concord, which was one of those labels that once it hit, it was kind of like this was it. A New Concord, I think, was acquired or went out of business or something like that. But a lot of these movies got lost for a long period of time. And Slumber Party Massacre was definitely one of those franchises that was just lost, and people were itching to get this thing. They were selling for big money. You couldn't find them. But you know where I ended up getting these? I ended up getting these at a movie gallery. It was a video store around here that was going out of business. So it said everything must go. And my friend Scott and I went into a movie gallery and bought a ton of stuff. And I got all of these and all the other Sorority House Massacre ones. They were all on the shelf in the horror movie section. I was able to acquire all of them in one hit for close to nothing. And this was really before I even knew that they were that sought after. I saw them there. I knew I needed them. They weren't in my collection. So I grabbed them. And then when I got home, I realized, wow, I just picked up 3 lost gems when it came to horror on DVD. So this was something people were really after until Shout Factory released like a collection years later. And now these are kind of easily accessible through things like Scream Factory and stuff. But yeah, I mean, part 1, 2, and 3. This was kind of the first time, I think, maybe the only time, I think part 3 has had a standalone edition. Am I correct? This might be the last time this has had its own standalone edition, I think. Because I do believe the Blu-ray was parts 2 and 3, yeah, in a double pack. And then the 4K was 1 and 2. So I do think this might be the last time we ever had part 3 on a solo physical media disc, which is pretty damn cool. Now, guys, maybe you can help me out here. I remember this being super, super hard to get. Because I remember when I got it, I think I must have posted about it in like a message board, and people would be like, holy shit, like, I can't believe you found that. That thing is like impossible to get. I don't know what was up with it. I don't know if it came and went. I don't know if it was the company who put it out. It could have been. It was Dark Sky. There was something about this release that made it hard to get. Was it recalled? I don't know. Guys, if you were collecting back then, let me know. But Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill was a DVD that was very, very sought after. Again, I remember picking this up and posting it in a message board. I think I got this maybe used on a website or something. I forget where I got it, but it was going for big money, and I didn't pay big money for it. But this edition here is still, I think, the only edition of this movie I have still. I don't know. Do I have Kill Baby Kill? I think this might be it. Guys, let me know if Kill Baby Kill has other releases. Was it part of the box sets? I forget, but this is definitely still sitting on my DVD shelf, and I don't know if it's there because it's the only edition I still have, or it's there because this was such a rare DVD to have at the time. But yeah, this is Kill Baby Kill. This was put out by Dark Sky Films. So guys, let me know if you remember Kill Baby Kill on DVD and why this one was so hard to get. All right, speaking of super hard to get, this was one of those movies, I knew nothing about it. But at the time, I was really big into Last House on the Left and a lot of movies like that. So getting into the genre, I was kind of getting introduced to a lot of movies like this. They had across the line of like exploitation and horror, and you know, I remember this one was one that everybody was after, and that is Last House on Dead End Street. Guys, let me know if you remember this thing being like so sought after. I think it was just because it's on like a weird label, like Barrel Entertainment or something like that, it says. But this was one that everybody was talking about, nobody could get. I don't remember how I acquired this, maybe at a convention or something like that, but I remember this was one of those movies that everybody was after. And I do think this did get a release later down the road. I think it's like a special disc on some Vinegar Syndrome release, I think. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but the only edition I think I own, unless I do have that Vinegar Syndrome disc, is this DVD here, and the one that was really sought after by collectors. So guys, let me know if you remember wanting, or did you have, Last House on Dead End Street. So guys, if you guys don't know, I'm a huge Anchor Bay Entertainment fan. So much so that I'm a co-host of a podcast. We go back in time and talk all things Anchor Bay and how that was a revolutionary company for physical media and for horror. I mean, I discovered so much stuff just by that damn little boat on the side of the spine. And we have people from Anchor Bay's past that worked at Anchor Bay coming on and talking to us about some of these editions. We go through a lot of the Anchor Bay stuff, the hard to find stuff, all the different releases of things like Halloween and stuff. So if you like Anchor Bay and you were collecting physical media back in the 90s and 2000s, you want to check us out at Anchor Bay Archives. You can find us on any audio platform, things like Apple and Spotify. And follow me, again, on this channel. If you're not subscribed, subscribe here at Born2beRad, and also subscribe to my co-hosted channel, Dead Pit, because we do put the video versions of the podcast on either of our YouTubes. We kind of like split it up. But anyway, huge Anchor Bay guy. Love Anchor Bay. I still collect Anchor Bay DVDs because they meant so much to me growing up. I found out about so many movies through this company, and there was a lot of movies that went out of print for this company. So before I even had a chance to like learn about them, they were already long gone and out of print. So I'm going to show a couple here that were very hard to come by. Now I have since got them into my collection, and they have since been released by other companies on things like Blu-ray and all that other stuff. So they're not long gone, but some of them were very hard to get. And the first one was William Friedkin's The Guardian. Again, it's got the little boat on the spine there. This was one that was very sought after. I knew nothing about The Guardian before I had this edition. And man, I've talked about this on another overlooked video that I did. I don't remember which one, but I love this movie. This movie does not get enough love. I understand maybe some people say, oh, you know, Friedkin, it's not that great of a movie. I love this movie. I think it's just got a cool tone to it. It's a cool story. It feels a very made-for-TV horror. But back then, that kind of shit was so cool. And I absolutely love this flick. And this was the first time I ever saw this. I ended up getting this and I think a VHS tape in a place that was closing down. And I picked them up because I knew at the time, I was like, oh, The Guardian, that's such a hard movie to have in your collection. So I don't care if it was a VHS DVD, I bought it. But guys, do you remember The Guardian being so hard to find for a long period of time from Anchor Bay? It is now out on Blu-ray from Scream Factory, so is it out of print? I'm not sure, but definitely check out The Guardian if you haven't. All right, the next one has had so many releases before this, but for the longest period of time, this thing was a hard movie to get. And that is the Anchor Bay version of Madman. Now, Madman is one that I was talking about Dead Pit earlier. They had a podcast back in the 2000s that I used to listen to, and they'd always talk about Madman and how great of a movie it was. And I was like, ooh, I've never seen this slasher called Madman. So, of course, I tried to hunt it down, and man, it was so hard to find. This Anchor Bay edition was impossible to find back then. It just wasn't available. This did get finally a re-release, I think, from Code Red. And once Code Red came around to re-release Madman, that's when I was able to snag that thing for the first time and check it out in all its glory. And I did go back in time and get this later down the road after that release, just because it was such an important part of physical media horror history, was the Anchor Bay Madman. So guys, if you're a fan of Madman, or if you remember this one being hard to get, let me know in the comments below. All right, sticking with more Anchor Bay, Alice Sweet Alice was another one that was long out of print for a long time, and then another company put it out, kind of a bare bones edition, but it's readily available now. Arrow put out it on 4K, on Blu-ray. I think it's on a 4K as well, but for a long time, this was nowhere to be found. Alice Sweet Alice was lost, because this Anchor Bay release was like one of their first releases. This came out in, I think it was like 1999 this came out. So this was like one of their early DVD releases. And it went out of print, was going for big money. So let me know if you guys remember this version, this early Anchor Bay Alice Sweet Alice. We like to say on the podcast, this was Alice Sweet Alice's rookie DVD. So definitely cool to have it in my collection now. But yeah, back then, Alice Sweet Alice was a tough one to find. And another tough one to find, which they did re-release later down the road, which I have talked about a little bit on my channel, but we will talk about this on the Anchor Bay Archives podcast. So keep your eyes and ears open. This is going to be talked about in December, because this was a crazy release that went out of print. And that is Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1 and 2 Double Pack. This was an early release that went out of print. And everybody was clamoring for this, not only just Part 1, but also Part 2. But later down the road, they did release Part 1 on its first ever unrated, uncut version. And then a couple years after that, they re-released this box set with Part 2, but you did get the uncut version of that in there. So this is the OG one. I have all those other releases, which you'll see on future episodes, but this is the one that everybody was after, was this early first release. Like I said, this had to have been, I don't know, this was an early one. It's like early 2000s this came out, but it came and went, and people could not get their hands on these movies, and this was definitely sought after by collectors. All right, now the last two picks, I'm going to keep it with Anchor Bay. These are the two movies that are so sought after on DVD that I still don't even have the damn things. They don't have any other releases other than DVD. And again, VHS is a different story, but no upgrades. No upgrades. And the first one is an Anchor Bay release of The Midnight Hour. The Midnight Hour is a cool-ass flick. Man, I don't know the problem with this. I don't know if it's the music, but this is a cool-ass movie to watch around spooky season. I've been trying to get my hands on this. Like I said, doing the Anchor Bay Archives podcast, we have a lot of connections to people who worked for Anchor Bay, and they had mentioned there was times where they were dumping boatloads of DVDs in the garbage because they just had overstock, or there was specific reasons they had to recall stuff or whatever, but they remember seeing a lot of Midnight Hour movies kind of getting tossed. Now, we haven't got into the deal of like why that was so limited with them, but we've asked around and I've asked, guys, does anybody have an extra midnight hour DVD? I've been wanting this forever and ever and ever, especially that Anchor Bay one. I could get a bootleg one, but I need the original Anchor Bay release. I still don't have it in my collection. It is one that I've seen. You can watch it on YouTube, great quality. You can stream it. I just can't get it on physical media, and I don't know if it ever will get another physical media edition again, but that is one that is a holy grail for me, the Anchor Bay version of A Midnight Hour. Now, the last one I want to talk about was not an Anchor Bay one. It was a made-for-TV movie called Crawl Space. No, not the Crawl Space that we know and that we have. This is another Crawl Space. This is one of those movies I actually heard from Cool Duder back in the day as one of his like favorite movies. And ever since that, I tried to track this thing down, and it just goes for crazy money, and I never could pull the trigger on it. So guys, if anybody out there has an extra Crawl Space, hit me up. I don't want to go crazy with the... I'm hoping to find it someday. I'm hoping to find it and not pay boatloads of money for this thing. But it is one that I'm still searching for that I don't know will ever get another release again. But that is one of those movies on DVD that is still sought after. Let me know if you like this kind of thing. Again, we're going back in time and just reliving the past, talking about some of these horror DVDs and how, to me, these are all huge releases in horror physical media history, and I love going back in time and reminiscing about those times when we were really just searching for some of these movies to add to our collection for the first time. Now, if you're digging this content, guys, let me know. I could do another 10 of these. There's so many. I've got a whole other pile that didn't make this list that I could add to another list, talking about these hard-to-find horror DVDs. But guys, if you dig it, let me know, and I will definitely do a sequel to that. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit those hype points, whatever that is. And like always, stay